can I get a motion to enter, or to return to open session, please?
So moved.
Second.
Can we have a roll call vote, please? Or any discussion, sorry. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Carla?
Aye.
Ooh, look at, oh, you know what? I have an old form. I'm sorry. Give me 1 second. Okay, my apologies. Anna?
Yes.
Corey?
Yes.
Gary? Carla? Renee? Brianna?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. The open session of the July 27th, 2023 governing meeting will now come to order. Laura, can you please call the roll?
Anna?
Here.
Corey?
Here.
Gary? Carla?
Here.
Renee? Brianna?
Here.
Amy?
Here.
We have quorum.
Thank you. Please rise and join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
Second.
Any discussion? We do need to make a couple of changes tonight to the agenda. Huh?
We don't agree with it, right?
No, we can. Yeah. So we will pull out the June 22nd, 2023 regular meeting minutes from the consent agenda, and that will become item D on the action items. And then we will add item number 4 under board improvements and operations will be the superintendent evaluation process. So I guess we probably need another motion to, yeah,
So do we,
We have to vote down
yeah,
the first motion.
yep. Okay, so for the first motion, then if we're going to approve the agenda with changes, then we would need to, I guess, address the motion that's been made, which is to approve the agenda as it was presented, which we, yeah, because we need to make changes. So, any more questions, anybody? So the first vote is for the agenda as it was presented originally, and then we'll vote again to approve the agenda.
I'll remove my motion.
I'm sorry?
I'll recall my
Okay,
motion.
thank you. So can I get a motion to approve the agenda as presented, or as amended with the changes that I mentioned?
So moved.
Any discussion?
You'll have a second.
oh, it's a second, sorry.
Corey? Yep.
All right, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Corey?
Yes.
Gary? Carla?
Aye.
Renee? Brianna?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
And Anna.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
All right. Next item on the agenda is the superintendent's report about the strategic plan.
Thank you. So, as we mentioned, as we proposed the strategic plan process to the board and the community, one of the pieces that I said we would incorporate would be a regular progress report, as it were, about the plan to the board. And so with 4 goal areas, what I thought we could do is to take time over the next few months to provide an overview of each of those goal areas, and then also to take a look at the outcomes and activities and events that are related to each of those goal areas for the current school year. So to do that tonight, we're going to start with operations, is Mr. John Fuhr, our Director of Operations and Facilities.
Thank you, Dr. Maychek. Thank you, Board. As you said, I'll be doing the operations portions for tonight. It's one of the 4 priority goals that was set by the board. And with this, as I get through these first few slides, I'll need to do an acknowledgement to somebody else in this room that brought this journey together for this operations committee. Because this person helped us take a look and use the overarching themes that were brought up in the exchange, the thought exchanges, but were presented by the community, students, and stakeholders in the community. And then they were also put through the equity and inclusion lenses. And this is where I want to say Mrs. Reese McComb for helping this committee. She agreed to partner with me. I learned a long time ago, if you think you're smart, find somebody smarter to help make your work even better. She definitely helped bring this committee work together, provided a way to help challenge the work we did, challenge the committee, challenge the decisions, ideas, and just really help bring this team over the line. And so I just really need to say thank you to Mrs. Cohn. Our group pretty much came down to 4 buckets, so to speak: safety, security, environment, and sustainability is where our work was kind of getting identified as the 4 main topics. That produced 4 outcomes. I like to think of these as there's kind of a brick and mortar version of it, where it's about how does the building help facilitate the process of education, how does it facilitate the inclusion for everybody in the community, that's from accessibility and just function and form for everybody. How does a building work to achieve that? So it's not the brick and mortar, but it is the function of that process, and how does the building facilitate that and not hinder in any way that process. And then there's the visual operation, it mentioned signage. How does that help bring and include everybody, what we're doing, what we're presenting, how we're saying it even without the words, from the colors and schemes of the schools inside and out. How is that helping to bring everything together in the spaces? And then the little more less warm and fuzzy, the sustainability or carbon footprint. That's more about the performance of the facility and how it's working and how we're being conscious and mindful of the expenses and impact on the community as a whole. So this is where the kind of the rubber meets the road of measured evidence, so we can show that we're actually achieving the things that we've set out to do. District Safety Committee, that's the first one up there. These are not necessarily in any hierarchy of order, they're just listed by outcome. That was worked on with, I'll say, Dr. Walls, and the crisis plan was put together. That was broken down. She had a big committee of at least 40, 50 folks, and we all worked on that from across the district, from every positions were included in that process. And that produced a new product. We measured spaces, we walked sites, we confirmed things could fit for what our needs were, made sure documents said what the book says they say. So it really went through with a fine-tooth comb, and we have a very good product with that now. It also helped produce, not necessarily, it's more parallel, this ESC facility now has a safety committee. It didn't necessarily make the list, but it's a byproduct of just all the work and saying we need to do something for this building. We're drilling at this facility now. We made flip charts. Mrs. Campanella, this work here now, this building actually feels better. You see the work at the vestibule. We're just trying to improve it for these folks that tend to, they're not in the schools. They don't get the same attention as some of the schools do. Pilot research based on single motion notification. That work has also been done. I won't say done. Is very far along in the process. About 10 days ago, did what should be a final scope and budget review that I'll be presenting to Dr. Maychek and Mr. Bobek next week, and hopefully you'll have that in front of you in the next few weeks or board meetings. That will help bring, again, increasing safety throughout the district to help just hopefully ease the minds of folks. It's a shame we have to have them, but if we have to, let's find the best tool we can and make it work for every person in the building. Some more measures of evidence on the second outcome. Highlighted playground equipment because it's a budget thing and something that's never done. We're perpetually doing it, but I just highlighted because this year we did a fair amount of work. Thanks in part to Mr. Sheldon over there at Intermediate. We removed some inappropriate equipment over there and improved that site to be another play space, a very large play space for the children. We moved equipment for accessibility reasons. We added some play space on both sides to help balance that out so they each are getting the same experiences. New play surfaces so the kids have safer fall zones when they are playing. Hopefully they do fall once in a while because it's okay. The bottom one down there, the gender neutral bathrooms, that one we will have, it does exist. It's just, in my interpretation, it's a topic that's just not acknowledged in that context. It's not identified in that context. And I think we can, I know we can achieve getting that out to folks, identifying, naming, showing adults and children how aware those spaces are. Right now, elementary is going through a complete sign change. And that's kind of I won't say our test pilot, but definitely a base where we're going to have some new ideas and new ways of doing what we're doing, which will help, I think, drive some future ideas down the road. Again, this kind of continues on the signage topic. With elementary being done entirely this year, this is kind of a phase 2 of the central office consolidation. The physical moves were last year, the office is this year, and the signage is 100% changing in that building this year. So we're kind of starting with a blank canvas. It seems like a simple thing to ask for certain signs, but you start realizing, well, this starts invoking certain ADA laws or certain this, we got to balance out. So it's just been an interesting journey on how we can do certain things. There's usually never a no, it's just a how do we achieve it. Dr. Thomas and I have had several conversations about some of these specific items, and I think we've got some good answers we can keep moving forward. But that will be done through the year, as well as the ROAR signage, mission. A lot of that old stuff is in the process of coming down, and all that new product will be up, I'm assuming, through the course of the next 6 months to 8 months. Conduct feasibility of LED. That, well, is fortunately almost done. We're just post the planning process. Mr. Bobeck and I were presented with a 25% bonus on the ComEd grant on top of the current grant. So we were able to get a bid package together, get it out, and you fortunately approved it for us, for the district. And that is 98% done. They're finishing up down the South Campus right now. So the district will be 98% LED. There are a few points where it's not cost effective to change them, but the district will be mostly LED. So there will be significant savings, which will help us bring us to the measures of evidence when we start to be able to present data on that topic down the road. The solar. Solar was done also, that was finishing up at the early stages of the strategic plan process. So middle school was finishing up, I should say. And it did start, Mr. Bobeck and I kind of investigating the primary site and what the opportunities were there. I'll show the initial findings, not overly warm and fuzzy, but we're challenging it, twisting it, put it back to the vendor again to try to find, is there a way we can make this feasible? How can we get this to work for us? Again, we'll keep chewing that up and work with the Facilities, Finance, and Sustainability Committee to share the data and maybe bring us different questions to ask. So that's the operations portion of the strategic plan. Is there any questions? Okay.
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment. I love seeing all the green things that are highlighted that are already happening. It is super exciting to in less than a month to see how many great things are happening, and it's super exciting to have been part of the team that wrote this plan and see it all happening. So thank you. We might have to write some more goals for you. I know you're overachieving at this point. I'm kidding. I kid. Thank you so much. Is that the end of the superintendent's report? Okay, thank you. Do we have citizen statements?
Yes, we do. We have 2.
Okay.
Darlene,
Oh, hi, and could you please just state your name and your relationship to the district? I'm sorry? Yeah, please do, so people at home can hear.
What do I need to do?
Just give us your name and your relationship to the district, please.
Okay, my name is Darlene Lipinski, and I just retired in June. Okay. My name is Darlene Lipinski, and I've been teaching at Woodland for 22 years. I just retired this past June. I spent 12 years teaching third grade at elementary and the last 10 years seventh grade language arts. During my tenure, I have been on 14 different committees, a building rep for the union, and was involved in negotiating 2 union contracts. When I started my career, it was Woodland that gave me a home for which I am forever grateful. I truly enjoyed my time at Woodland. I'm writing to you not to complain, to blame, or to ridicule. I'm merely giving you some insight, thoughts, and hopefully some ideas for possible solutions. Take from it what you will. Right now, we know the district's biggest issue is discipline, and there's a simple solution. Follow the rubric. This truly hasn't been done since I started here at Woodland. There have been so many interpretations that we're all over the place when it comes to discipline, and there's no need for that. The rubric is clear and concise. By doing so, you eliminate issues of race and prior behavior bias. Equity comes with consistency. If you want true equity, then only look at the infraction and nothing else. If the rubric is going to be followed with integrity, then the board and superintendent can give administrators the autonomy to address issues without the risk of being called on the carpet at a board meeting because the number of office referrals are too high, or given to a parent's rant about at the expense of damaging the administrator's authority and respect. I've seen it happen many times over the years. I've always believed that the Board of Education has the best interests of students and staff. However, the truth of the matter is that the board makes it hard for honest conversation about what's going on. Therefore, decisions are made sometimes based on theory and not always actual experience. I understand that being on the board is voluntary. You are graciously giving up your time to make the district a better place. This is kind of a radical idea, and I know it's a lot to ask, but it's important. The board members should have to spend some time observing in the classroom, at least in the buildings.
I'm sorry, but your 2 minutes are up.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Sonia.
Ann Rice is going to finish my statement for
Okay,
me.
thanks.
Good evening. Ann Rice. I am currently 8th grade science teacher at Woodland Middle School. Important decisions that affect an entire population can't be made with integrity without seeing, feeling, and experiencing the very platform for which you are making decisions on. Everyone needs perspective to make good decisions, and most board members of education are sometimes out of touch with what is really going on. The administration can't be the scapegoats for everything when they are not given the ability to handle a situation with the support of the board and superintendent. A good manager supports decisions in front of the audience and only then addresses a poor decision behind closed doors so that it doesn't happen in the future. Otherwise, you take away the administrator's power in front of said audience, and therefore they are seen as a lesser leader and respect is lost. What is going to happen the next time a situation arises and that same administrator tries to address it? We really all want the same things. We just tend to go about it differently. But there is no room for inconsistencies in a school district, especially one of this size. My thought is that if you really want to discourage bad behavior, start out at the beginning of the year strong and follow the rubric. Students will get the message that in this district, we don't allow bad behavior to impede education. Don't succumb to parent tantrums. You have the rubric to back you up. I understand that equity is very important, as it should be, but I don't think the consequences are necessarily seeing true equity. So if we are seeking clearer waters, let's put it to the test. The ESC that currently looks at the merit of out-of-school suspensions should now look at all suspensions and compare it to the rubric with one exception. The office referral should come to this person with just a number, no name, no race, and no prior behavior issues, just the infraction. Then at the end of the school year, replace the numbers with name, race, etc., and take a look and see if we are really doing what we are supposed to be doing when it comes to equity and discipline. Thank you for your time and the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the consent agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Gary? Carla?
Aye.
Renee? Brianna?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Anna?
Yes.
Corey?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Moving on to action items. Item A is the approval of a memorandum of understanding for employee FY 23-16. Can I get a motion to approve the MOU for employee FY 23-16 as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Carla?
I'm abstaining.
Renee? Brianna?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Anna?
Yes.
Corey?
Yes.
Gary? Motion carries 4-0 with 1 abstention.
Thank you. The next item is the approval of the 1.0 FTE Success Center counselor position and job description. There are 2 motions. Can I have a motion to approve the Success Center counselor position job description?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Renee? Brianna?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Anna?
Yes.
Corey?
Yes.
Gary? Carla?
No.
And motion carries 4-1.
Thank you. And can I have a motion to approve the 1.0 FTE Success Center counselor?
Done.
Yeah, this is the second one. Yeah, no, there's 2.
One was for the job description.
The
and-
job
Oh, got it,
description,
got it,
and
got
this
it.
one is the actual position, the
Got it.
creation of the position.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Just over here. Anna?
Yes.
And Amy?
Yes.
Brianna?
Yes.
Corey?
Yes.
Gary? Carla?
No.
And Renee? Motion carries 4-1.
Thank you. The next item is approval of the Dean of Student Culture position. Can I get a motion to approve the Dean of Student Culture position and job description as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Amy?
Yes.
Anna?
Yes.
Corey?
Yes.
Gary? Carla?
No.
Renee? And Brianna?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-1.
Thank you. So the next item is not on your existing agenda because we added it at the beginning of the meeting. It is a change to the June 22nd, 2023 regular meeting minutes. And Brianna, do you want to discuss that?
In the minutes, it states that the statement that I read was on behalf of the whole board, and it should be reflected that it was read on behalf of Corey in his absence.
And I guess technically, I guess we should have a motion to approve the June 22nd, 2023 regular meeting minutes with that change.
Okay, so just so I get it, I'm sorry to interrupt. So I make sure that I do the minutes correctly. You're changing the, sorry, let me just pull them out real quick. So the public statement on behalf of the board should now say, on behalf of Corey?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
But during
Thank
the
you.
meeting, you said it was on behalf of the board.
No.
We might need to go back and look at the tape before we make the change. Because that was my understanding as well. And I didn't write the minutes.
We're not to discussion yet, I think. Was just the motion, am I right?
Mhm.
Am I remembering that correctly? So can we,
We you have to have a motion to approve it first.
Correct.
Before you have a discussion.
That's what I said. So can I get a
No, you
motion?
have to have a motion to approve the minutes. You can't approve the change. You're having the discussion, you can't do that.
Can I get a motion to approve the minutes for the June 22nd, 2023 regular meeting?
Anna?
No, we're looking for a motion at this point. Sorry, Laura.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's
That's
okay.
right. Apologize.
So moved.
Can I get a second? Okay. I believe that we can have, if there's no second for that motion, we can have a separate motion to approve the June 22nd, 2023 regular meeting minutes with an amendment to change the wording of this, about the statement that was read at the beginning of the meeting. We'll change the wording from,
I don't think you can do that.
okay, from by the board, or a statement on behalf of the board, to a statement read on behalf of Vice President Corey Homer. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I don't think your motion was correct. I think you're violating Robert's Rules of Order right now. There is certain protocols you have to follow for an open meeting of the Board of Education. You're not following those right now.
What would you like to see happen, Carla?
You make the motion to approve the minutes, get a first and a second, and then the discussion where you would discuss amending those. But you have to put the action on the table first. You can't decide outside of the meeting that you're going to amend it. And that's what you guys just did. That's a violation of the Open Meetings Act.
Okay, so if there, Laura, is there an issue with waiting on this until next month?
The discussion has to occur at the board table. It should not occur outside of the meeting. You and Brianna can't discuss things.
We
or
didn't.
Corey can't discuss things outside of the meeting and then bring them back. So you make the motion, you have the discussion, Laura makes the changes if the board feels it is appropriate. It's not a problem to have the first and the second the way you set it up at first. You just didn't get a second for whatever reason.
So the motion
But one
fails.
of your board members can second that
Well,
and have the discussion.
I can't force someone to second the motion.
So if we
so the
call the
motion-
second, we're just gonna, and then we go into conversation, right? Is
No,
that-
you discuss it.
We discuss it, we go to the discussion, yeah.
You're right.
Okay.
You have the discussion.
We can try again then, I guess.
Try it again.
Yeah.
Can I get a motion to approve the June 22nd, 2023 regular meeting minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
I believe the minutes are inaccurate, and that the statement that I read at the beginning of the meeting was on behalf of Corey because he was absent. It was not from the entire board.
And that was my understanding too. I asked to read it based on me and me alone, because I wasn't at the last meeting.
And that's what I said at the beginning of the meeting before, when I introduced Brianna to read the statement.
But that's not what she said when she read the statement, otherwise it wouldn't have come across in the minutes that way, and I took it that way too.
Did you
So
look up
again,
the video?
Before we change it, we should look at what you actually said.
So how do we,
Okay, so if we do not want to make an amendment at this time, then I don't see any other way to do it than to bring this back at another board meeting, because if there's more information that people need before they're ready to vote on how to approve these minutes, then that's not going to happen during this meeting.
And we can have Ms. Campanella look at last month's video to confirm what the language was.
So that was kind of the question I was asking is, legally, would we be okay to approve these minutes at next month's meeting, or is it, there's a time factor?
Minutes are to be posted within 10 days of approval, so, but
Okay.
I don't know, if they're not approved, honestly, I'm not sure how that would work. I've never had this come up.
Prepare to play back the meeting. Is that-
That's why I was bringing up the meeting, so. The video is unavailable.
There have been-
Gosh, are you kidding me?
There's been instances in the past, for example, where a meeting couldn't be held because there wasn't a quorum, for example, and so that the voting on all the business from that month was moved to the following month.
Oh, that's
I
true.
don't think this would be precedent setting,
Okay.
particularly if there's a question that they might be wrong, so.
Okay. All right, so we do have a motion on the floor to approve the minutes as they're presented, so we still need to take a vote on that. But we do also have the option, if you, to bring this back for next month's meeting for a vote. Any other discussion? And just a reminder, this motion is to approve them as they're written.
Okay.
If we think they need to be amended, then,
Or we need to investigate
Right.
before we agree to it. Okay.
yeah.
I'm willing to give time so that we're all in agreement. I don't have a problem with what Carla's bringing up, so,
Okay.
I just bring it up. She brought it up.
Okay. Can we have a roll call vote on approving the minutes as presented, please?
Anna,
No.
Corey,
No.
Gary, Carla,
Aye.
Renee, Brianna,
No.
Amy.
no.
Okay, motion fails 1 to 4.
Thank you. So can we please put that on our plans for next month's agenda?
Do you know when you read it? Was it before citizen statements?
Yes. Yep. Before the agenda was approved, all of that. So we'll move on to reports and discussion items. We'll start with a written report and presentation on the middle school English language arts and English as a second language instructional materials adoption.
Yeah, so it is my pleasure to introduce some of our fantastic middle school staff. I want to introduce Ms. Carrie Laporte, sixth grade language arts teacher and language arts department chair at the middle school, and also Mary Santry, an eighth grade language arts teacher, and of course Dr. Kiefer and Ms. Sanchez-Cepezi, who have a report and presentation for you.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Board of Education, Dr. Maychuk. We're here again to present to you the middle school English language arts and ESL curriculum and materials adoption. And Dr. Maychuk already introduced everybody. We have 2 members of our team who actually were very involved in it. And I do want to acknowledge the entire ELA department for their work on this. We work together as an entire department. And we do have teachers on the board here who also worked on the AAG's curriculum documents and also piloted, including Carrie and Mary. And again, thanks to Elizabeth and Stephen for their support as well, too.
So we started this process last fall, and the first thing we did was we looked back at the assessment data. What was the student, what were their strengths, and what were their weaknesses? And we did that as a whole department before we broke into smaller groups to work on the specifics of the AAGs. And then as we did that, we focused on the standards, we focused on the rigor, and we focused on engaging the students, because that's really important. Once we did that, we ran everything by the Regional Board of Education to make sure they kind of helped us make sure we were focused and had everything under control. What we look for is making sure as we went through our curriculum, we have a balance of both fiction and nonfiction at a rigorous level for all of our students. Rigor is kind of a subjective method of thinking of things because rigor to one student is different than another. So we looked at all that. We also looked at making sure we had different types of writing, different types of presentations, again, engaging the students. and making sure what we were presenting to the students in the classroom was engaging, was interesting to them, because if they can see it, them in the curriculum and in the topics, they can be it. So that was really very important to us.
Thank you. So once our AEG curriculum units are completed, we have to find instructional materials that are of high quality. So we follow this three-phase process. You've probably seen this before. We always start off with EdReports. EdReports.org is an independent organization that uses high levels of criteria and rubrics to make sure everything's on alignment, standards are in alignment, and it's easy for teachers to use. We bring in the publishers. We do thorough presentations. We use rubrics and criteria to make sure it matches everything we need for reading and writing. And then the teachers pilot both of them, and we come to a consensus at the end of the process to make sure we have the right materials for what we're looking for in quality materials.
Thank you. So after looking at the Study Sync program, some of the things that teachers really liked was the diversity in the text that students were exposed to, in terms of could they see themselves in what they were reading, can they see their classmates. In addition to that, the Study Sync offers a lot of really easy differentiation options where students may need scaffolding for a lesson. It's very easy to implement that into the classroom in real time. In addition to extension activities, it has so many different tools that teachers can use, and we really liked that part of Study Sync. We also started to look at novels more this year, and the middle school is super excited because we have the opportunity for students to have consumable novels for the first time so that they can annotate and interact with the text as they're reading it. Right now we're looking at a possibility of a minimum of 3 novels for kids to be reading throughout the school year. One would be a common novel that every 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade student would be exposed to. The second one would be teacher choice, so teachers would have the autonomy to choose a book that they felt like was a good fit for their students who were sitting in front of them. And the third one, which we're really excited for, is student voice and choice, where students would have a variety of books to choose from, and they would be able to then pick which book they thought was the best fit for them. This is still a work in progress with adding novels to our collection, so we know this school year we would like to devote a lot of time to finding new books. We've had teachers all summer long reading and talking and looking forward to adding to our collections.
So Sheltered English Language Arts. Sheltered English Language Arts class is specifically designed for our students who are learning English as a second language and are not in our dual language program. These students have particular needs, and in the past we've been servicing them through a sheltered social studies. In looking at our data over the years, we wanted to make a change where we felt we needed to give more support to our students. And the new schedule for the middle school is going to give us that opportunity. So we were able to shift from a sheltered social studies to a sheltered English language arts block. And we, with the addition of the position you approved for a second ESL teacher, were able to offer 2 periods of English language arts specifically to our students learning that as a second language. So with that in mind, we needed the resources in addition with what was happening in conjunction with our English language arts sections. The last time we reviewed materials was in 2012. And since then, there has been substantial changes. And one of those is the organization that produces the language development standards, WIDA, and also produces our access assessment, which measures English language proficiency, updated their standards. The access test since 2012 has also updated its rigor. So we needed material that were really better meeting the needs of our students and that we could individualize for them. So keeping that in mind, we developed selection criteria. Our English as a second language shelter teachers and the coordinator of ESL and myself then reviewed material that WIDA had also went through. We narrowed it down and we came to Houghton Mifflin Harcourt's English 3D. And we particularly liked this product because it was highly flexible. We have not had some online materials for them, and so we're able to now offer them online and print materials. They have various scaffolds in there, and we can teach the units in any order. And in addition, it's specifically made for students that are learning English as a second language. And so their material is highly engaging, high interest, reflects the students in the classroom, and develops their 4 domains of language.
Okay, so back here behind us, we do have examples of StudySync and English 3D if you want to look through it over the next month or so. Because next month we're going to come to you in August and ask for some financial help for this. So the McGraw-Hill StudySync is a 6-year one-time cost, and we're going to spend some money on 3 student paperback novels to make sure students have student voice and choice. We have some common experiences, and of course Elizabeth's HMH 3D is involved as well too. So PD for everything is completely free, and this is what we're going to ask for the board for next month. Any questions?
And that's already budgeted?
Yes, ma'am.
So nothing outside of what's budgeted?
No, not at all.
Can you go to the previous slide real quick? How's this?
The which one?
The last one, sorry. I was just looking
Sure.
at that first. For the study thing, looks really cool. Looking at. Have you guys seen like both that, like the student and teacher end kind of thing?
Yes, we had. We had access to both teacher and student ends. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And
We do a very thorough investigation of those online platforms to
Yeah.
make sure it's easy for kids to move around,
Yeah.
and also for teachers too as well.
Yeah, it looks
Absolutely.
really clean. I like the look
Yeah.
of it.
It's very interactive, and it's really easy for teachers to modify it for students if you're high ability or you need some extra help and support.
That was my question as well, was how do you make sure that students know how to use these tools? Because I think sometimes, just in my personal experience with my kids, I've seen like there are really great tools that do really great things, but if you don't know how to use them, then it's not really great for anything. So is there like going to be a learning curve for kids to understand how to use them?
You saw it from the teacher end.
So that's one of the reasons why teachers and students, because we asked the kids too during the pilot, like, which one did you like? What's easier? And StudySync was by far easier for students and teachers to navigate. It's very, like you said, it's a very clean platform. It's just kind of click, click, go. It's pretty intuitive. And then everything that's offered on the digital platform, you can also print as well. So you always have those options too.
Awesome. Love to hear it. Thank you. I love all the references. Like I hear so many words in here that are in the strategic plan. So I love to see all of this coming together with the differentiation, which we all know can mean a wide range of things.
Right,
So
right,
it sounds
right.
great.
Yeah, we use it as a basis for all of our conversations and agendas to make sure we incorporate student voice and choice and differentiation, and everything that really is a mission and vision for Woodland. We always do that.
Yes, the student voice and choice too. Yeah,
Mhm.
right. I love
We're
it.
very excited
Awesome.
about that. Yeah.
Nice job.
Anything else? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Before we move on, I just want to say thank you to our colleagues and all the work and time you put in, and how thoughtful the work was, and what a wonderful choice you've made. So thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
The next item on our agenda is a presentation on the Woodland Middle School Student Focus Group feedback. Dr. Maychuk is going to present his findings and recommendations from the series of focus groups he conducted with 6th and 7th grade students at the middle school in May of 2023.
Thank you. So I had an opportunity to meet with 2 different groups of students, 6th and 7th grade, and we held these conversations towards the end of the 22-23 school year. And what I had asked Tiffany to help me put together was a group of kids that were from all, all demographics, but that were in total, representative of the student population at the middle school. But I didn't want all advanced students. I didn't want, only students with IPs or anything like that. I just wanted a cross-section of the population, but that was demographically one which would kind of be representative of the population of the school as a whole. And so there's the particulars, and that was the 7th grade group, which was awesome. What ended up happening, and that should be 1, 2, 3. I don't know why they're all labeled number 1. I apologize for that. But when I looked at the results and tried to sort of put them together, really taking a lead from watching Brooke kind of group the findings from the thought exchange that we did related to the strategic plan, I tried to find themes, and you have outliers, and this one loved something, and this one hated something else. But the ideas that came up again and again, I thought, well, there's something there, and I found them kind of interesting. And oddly enough, there were 10 of them when all was said and done. So it's kind of a top 10 list, even though this says it's 1, 1, and 1. So I apologize for that. The first thing. So I said, well, what's working for you? What do you like about school? Middle school students in 6th and 7th grade really like Woodland Middle School. And it was really encouraging to hear. Kids like the number of clubs that are offered. They like that they get to go on field trips. Of course, that was on everybody's mind towards the end of the school year. They like the number of after-school activities in which they can participate. And they like the options available for their Explore classes. When I met with the kids, they had just recently completed the school play, Peter Pan, and some of the kids had been in it. And they really liked the opportunity to participate in the drama program. So that was exciting. Number 2, they think adults only focus on the negatives. The impetus for meeting with them was a lot of the discussion that the adults in our community had about some of the discipline challenges, and we had Dr. Bolton had come in prior to the night before the May board meeting. And so the kids said, there's a lot of publicity on social media surrounding the fights at middle school, and people are thinking, they were telling me that friends from other schools, their peers that they know from other schools were asking them, oh my gosh, and is that all you do? And kids thought that in a weird way, so much conversation about trying to solve this problem was kind of creating a negative reputation for the kids at Woodland, that's all they do is fight, and they wanted to be seen differently. And they talked about how the students who misbehave or make poor choices seem to get a lot of the attention from the adults, and they said that they wished that was different. And they, when I said, well, how do we fix that, they asked if there could be a way to highlight some of the cool things and accomplishments that the kids at the middle school are doing more regularly, and I thought that was really insightful. That led to, so then the talk turned to areas that might not be so safe and fighting, and they talked about the common areas of the school and how there's just too many people, like unstructured time. So they talked about lines being too long. Some kids, it wasn't so much fighting, but that there's so many kids that sometimes kids had to go without breakfast because they were waiting in line to get breakfast, and the bell rang and they had to get out of line to get to class. That is something that came up. They talked about passing periods, especially before and after PE. And I know right around that time, administration had sort of rethought bell schedule for different the 3 grade levels, and to alleviate the crowding in the hallways, which was really successful. But I thought it was really interesting that the students picked up on that as well. And while they didn't necessarily use the word unsafe, some of them did. They just said too many kids. It's like you're bumping into people and it's uncomfortable, and again, really was impacting their ability in some cases to grab something to eat. Those are numbered correctly, so that's good. Number 4, they talked about things that they wanted to see. So there was a part of the conversation was, what would you like to see differently, or what could be better? The kids asked if the adults could take a look at the restrooms. And what I thought was interesting about this is that there was research conducted going all the way back to the 60s or early 70s about, broken windows in apartments, right? And that I think there's even it's a principle or a theorem that, when a window's broken and you keep walking by it and nobody fixes it, it sends a message that it's okay to have broken windows, and then that leads to graffiti and to trash and other things. But when there's a window broken that gets fixed immediately, it sends the message that that's not okay here. And I thought of that in kind of an extreme example. But kids talked about, going to use the restroom and finding broken toilets. A couple of students said that there were at that time restrooms at the middle school that didn't have doors on the stalls. And, that not only did it lead to people not wanting to use the restrooms, but then they thought it was kind of inviting some of the negative behaviors that they identified as happening in the restrooms. And that because over time, the kids, the unwritten rule was you don't use this restroom to go to the bathroom because it's broken. You go in there to talk about fighting or smoking or whatever it was that they were going to do in there. So I thought that was really interesting that the kids asked if we could pay more attention to making sure that all the restrooms were in working order. Number 5, and I know it's on the agenda tonight, but the kids talked about an ambassador program. And they talked about it a little bit differently than the research the board had requested that I do in terms of a board representative. They called, when I said, what do you mean by an ambassador program? They talked about their experiences coming into 6th grade, and Tiffany and I have already talked about this, but they talked about how even though the formal orientation was great, there's sort of the ins and outs of navigating Woodland Middle School that a tour, with your parents and all that, it didn't really cover it. And what they said that if they could go back and be 6th graders again, what would have been helpful for them was to have an upperclassman, like an 8th grader, paired up with them for the first few weeks of school, or a way to check in to make sure that they understand their schedule. Do you know where you're going? Where do you sign up for clubs and sports? Where do you go for practice? What happens if you can't get your lunch in time? So there were questions that they thought that an older peer could answer. And the 7th graders said, well, that would be a really great way to kind of show us as leaders in the school. And I thought that was kind of a cool idea. So there was a lot of talk about food. And I said, well, tell me about the food. Because in my experience, when kids have an opportunity to do so, one of the things that they like to talk about is how they don't like the lunch food. Kids at middle school really like their lunch, for the most part. They talked about liking the variety of options available, and that they found the items tasty. Of course, when I said, what do you like, the pizza was number 1. But what they did talk about was it wasn't the food where they wanted more options. They asked, and this is something that I heard all year, not only from students but from parents as well, but they asked for more choices in the cafeteria. Like, why can't we sit, and there's classrooms around the cafeteria where they're empty. If we're going to have an adult supervision, couldn't some of us go to one of those rooms where it's not so crowded or not so noisy? On a nice day, there's picnic tables outside at all of our schools. I'm not sure who uses them, but it doesn't seem like it's students. And kids said, couldn't we, as long as we were, showing raw behavior, why couldn't a group of us go outside to eat as long as an adult was there to watch? And they talked about wanting some different options, and I thought that was really interesting. They also talked about a way to something like this would be a way to acknowledge kids who are showing positive behavior as opposed to just penalizing the kids who are showing negative behaviors. One of the things that I found really surprising was that the kids talked about, well, on the one hand, they said that the adults were focusing a lot on the negative behaviors. They also said that some of the negative behaviors maybe wouldn't occur if the penalties, and I think we had some of our colleagues speak to it tonight, they used the word consistency. And that the kids, they said that they had heard stories of kids coming back like after serving an in-school suspension, and that it didn't really seem like that much of a negative consequence for them. And they said, well, if it's not really a consequence, then why would we keep doing it if it's not helping, if it's not changing anything? They also wanted more accountability. They didn't use that term they said, kids who are bystanders or kids who encourage other kids to fight, and that's something that I know we've talked about a lot in some of the previous monthly meetings we've had and some of the public comments, is that kids encouraging each other to arrange fights or negative situations online or through text or through Instagram or whatever, and then coming to school to bring those situations to fruition. And the kids, they didn't like that, and they while they didn't have a lot of ideas for how to fix it, they recognized it as one of the biggest problems that they saw in terms of the negative behaviors there. Number 8, they talked about bringing back PBIS. And I think there was a perception, some of the kids said, well, PBIS, like the ROAR matrix, the ROAR behavior, the ROAR acronym, we've been hearing it since kindergarten, and we're in middle school now. But then other kids said, well, but yeah, we have a ROAR store, but the students I spoke with had asked for some different items, and they said, well, if there were things that were more appealing to middle school students, then maybe students might buy into it, or that would be more of an incentive. When I asked the kinds of things that they talked about, that they would be willing to try to trade ROAR pause for. They talked, of course, they wanted Apple earbuds. But, and I said, maybe we can get that donated through a community group or foundation or something. But then they also talked about things like homework passes, like getting passes to eat lunch in different locations, things like snacks like a Gatorade or a bag of chips that they could have with their lunch or whatever. So I think what was really interesting to me is they didn't think that the concept of incentivizing or acknowledging positive behavior, they really liked that part of it, but maybe with middle school and young adolescents, you kind of need to sort of make it a little hipper or cooler than the way that we're talking about the matrix in the elementary grades. Number 9, I thought it was really interesting that our students were very empathic for their substitute teachers, and they talked about the classrooms where substitutes, our guest teachers teach, sometimes being problematic from a behavior standpoint. And they talked about, like a lot of times, the assignment when there's a guest teacher would be like to read silently and then answer questions, or here's a packet of things to do independently. And they mentioned that kind of sets, they called it a setup sometimes for the teacher, because when kids don't want to do that or finish it much faster than what the lesson plan said they were going to finish it, well, then they start, messing around or talking to the kid next to them or wanting to go for a drink of water and things like that. And they talked about that if the guest teachers were allowed to do more engaging and hands-on and collaborative work with the kids, that could be different. They also talked about, on the other hand, that sometimes their substitute teachers, they thought they favored some students. There were some students who were black and brown students who felt that they were treated a little bit differently by some of their guest teachers than their white peers. And they asked, like, for example, if substitute teachers, I thought it was interesting because they asked, are they trained in like CPR? Do they know all the safety drills? And do they get to study that when they come in? And I thought those were great questions. And then finally, kids, because the whole issue was surrounding, and the impetus of the conversation was about how safe are you at school. And kids feel safe at middle school most of the time. They identified areas of the school, like the hallways or the restrooms, where sometimes because of the number of students, the volume of kids in one place at the same time, that it sometimes can feel unsafe or overwhelming. But what they did really like is how administration had set up their academic schedules, that all of their content classes were on team in the same hall. And so not only were their classrooms close to one another, but then they also didn't, with the building being so large, they didn't have to spend so much time walking in between their core academic classes. They did talk about, while they like their Explore classes, getting to and from them is sometimes problematic. And I mentioned earlier the challenge of going in and out of the gym in the back hall during PE time, for example, where they said was problematic. When I said, so what should we do, they suggested hiring more hall monitors, which again is actually a step that we tried to take in the spring. to bring more folks in. And then they also said that besides bringing more people in, to have more adults walking around in the halls during those 2 periods. They did mention how much they appreciated in between their academic classes that their teachers come out into the hall, and that they felt comfortable and safe seeing a trusted adult when they were going to and from. So overall, really great feedback and really candid conversation. I'm so impressed with this group for their honesty. And in terms of next steps, again, 111 again, I'm really sorry for that. But I think, and as we've heard in a number of ways tonight already, even with the curriculum selections that we're making for middle school, but I think administratively, and we talked about this, I had a meeting with all 4 of our principals today, but we need to continue to find ways to hear and incorporate student voice in our decision making. Number 2, what was very clear is that our students are begging us to emphasize and promote a positive school culture, and not only put things in place to create a more positive school culture, but to recognize students who contribute to it being a positive school culture. And then finally, this notion of working in a middle school for all of us, this idea that somebody had recently asked me the difference between a middle school and a junior high, and really, although there's a lot of great research out there, it really boils down to adults in a middle school are committed to working with young adolescents, while junior high is much more focused on content and preparing kids academically. Not that we don't care about academics, but we recognize that there are other things that are important as well, like safety and belonging and well-being. And so I think that while this is not a specific request from students, in a lot of the things that they said, it was very clear, like even in terms of the substitute teachers, for example, that they wished people had a better understanding of who they were as young men and women, and could help them engage in their lessons more. So those are the next steps that I think as a district we should take. We're moving forward with that already. Again, as part of my conversation today with the principals, we talked about having what student advisory groups could look like at each of the 4 schools. We're talking about possibly having a student representative in some way, shape, or form meeting with the board. I certainly would like to start a superintendent's student advisory group as we get started in the school year. So, I thought what was really interesting is that a lot of the student perceptions and suggestions really helped. They weren't very different than some of our own, and they really helped support some of the notions that I think we already thought were working or weren't working or needed to be put in place. So really good discussions. I'm really grateful to the students who participated, and there was a great, a couple of really great conversations. Any questions?
Next steps.
So it was a mixture of like 6th, 7th, 8th grade, right? Is that what it was?
It was one focus group was made up of 17 6th graders, and the second one was made up of 17 7th graders.
Okay.
So they weren't combined. It was just based on their schedules. It was one group was 6th grade for like 90 minutes, and the other group was 7th grade.
Do you plan on meeting with them again in fall?
I'd like to, and again, I know Tiffany talked about having some advisory groups both for parents and students, so I don't want to steal her thunder.
Yeah.
But I certainly, again, I would like to figure out some sort of mechanism where I could meet with kids, through the principals at all 4 schools, honestly. Of course, that conversation with kindergartners will look differently than middle school, but certainly students who show up for school every day, regardless of their age, have ideas of how we can make things better. I'd like to hear them.
Yeah. Did you have to introduce yourself, who you were, to them?
Some of them said, I know you, but other ones were like, yeah. Yes. Which also tells me I need to get into the building more.
Any more questions, comments? I love this. I love that, at the end of the school year when things were challenging, that we were listening to kids. And I want to know who these 7th graders that are concerned about teachers being trained in CPR are, because that's amazing. I love that. Thanks, Bob. The next item on the agenda is written report on annual food donation policy. So every 3 years at minimum, by board policy, the administration is mandated to provide information on the efforts to donate excess food to establishments serving community members in need. And so we have a written memo in the packet about that. Are there any questions? All right. We'll move on to item D, written report on instructional technology coordinator pilot. So in your packet is a memo on the point 2 FTE instructional technology coordinator. The Board of Education approved in November of 2022. And right now, Dr. Machek is recommending that we don't move forward with the position at this time due to some initiatives the new Director of Technology and Innovation has proposed, which is awesome. Are there any questions?
Will we hear about those other options at a different meeting, I guess, or how do you kind of see that?
In terms of like how we're going to handle some of these questions? Yes.
Yeah, okay,
definitely.
yeah. That's, yeah. Wrong question, but yeah, you understood me.
What is really has come down to, Mr. Homer, is Sherry has been awesome. And one of the biggest things that she's done is really tried to find ways to facilitate communication, not only among the tech team, but also between tech and the rest of the users, right? I don't know what the other word to use, the constituency across the district. And that was part of the problem, is that there were concerns the teachers were having in terms of trying to use programs, for example, that really were like a no man's land because it wasn't any one person's responsibility to address those. And Mr. Kyle Block did a great job doing what we asked him to do, but really the responsibilities and those duties, when we redesigned the Director of Technology and Innovation's job description, and then even tonight, some of those responsibilities that the board, where the board approved the revision of the assistant's job description, it's much more clearly defined whose role those are now. So yes.
Great.
Any more questions? All right. Item E on the agenda is a written report on the Student Ambassador Program. So at last month's meeting, the board had asked Dr. Machek to research a student ambassador to the board and report back on the feasibility of starting a program. So we have a memo about that in our packet. And we'd like to kind of open the floor for discussion about this. Anybody want to volunteer to start?
Well, first I want to say thank you. I'm sure it was a lot of time and effort contacting the different school districts and IASB, so thank you for doing that, to gather all the information for us. I mean, I know you summarized it in your report, but could you just give us like a 2-point, what's your gut feeling?
So first of all, I think this concept is much more, for whatever the reason, it seems much more prevalent with high school students than middle school. And I was so grateful to find Glen Ellen School District 89, and that there really was the only district that I could find doing, a true student representative program where students sit at the board table on a monthly basis. A number of districts in Lake County, as I talked to my superintendent colleagues this summer, are starting something that I kind of touched on in the last presentation, which is like superintendents having like advisory groups, and then having a student kind of attend a board meeting and report out, much like the way Mr. Sheldon had a student talk about how she's supporting the PBIS program at intermediate. And that seemed to be much more common. That everybody who was doing it liked what they were doing and wanted it to continue. But yeah, I think to me, it really looked like two different functions. I mean, I know when we, for the starting rate workshop, one of the comments in June was, how can the board, how do we get more information about events going on in each of the schools in a more timely and like proactive fashion, so that if we know there's a school play, we're not hearing about how awesome it was a week later, we might be able to attend. And I think if you had the, a student report as part of a standing agenda item, that person could report on all the events coming up in each of the schools. But I think, for example, if you were looking at, I know we'll have to go out to bid on a food service contract next year. If you wanted to get student input on that in real time and be able to talk about what are the pros and cons and what do you like, what don't you like, then it might be more appropriate to have the traditional model, to use that term, although it's not all that traditional, where you've got a student right here where you could ask. Or like this month, say, can you go back and talk to your peers, or when you go visit the other schools, ask them what they think about X, Y, or Z. And then they come back with specific information from, that the board is requesting to help them make a decision. And so I think, to me, that seemed to be the difference between the two models. It's the difference between inviting a student to come talk to the board about all the cool things happening in the school and district versus having a student voice to help the board clarify its thinking and decision-making about a particular issue.
I really liked one of the bullet points from one of the districts was that sometimes students would bring initiatives that they were interested in seeing to the board, and I just think that would be awesome. I think that it's just, that's the kind of insight into what it's like. I mean, some of the things that we saw in your presentation from the groups that you met with, like, I didn't realize that lunch is, so crowded, and that, that's something that kids were really feeling and, have feelings about. So I am really excited about this. What about as far as a timeline? How long do you think it would take us to, well, I know that's one of the bullet points, but.
I guess we have to decide like how we want to see it. Like, do we want to go, like I'm looking at the bullets, like, do we want to do exactly what Glen Ellen did? Do we want to like make our own version of it? Like, what do you kind of see?
And after reading through Dr. Matrix's report and all the documentation and thinking about where we are as a current board, I think at this point it would be more effective to start like a principal advisory group at each school.
That's what I was thinking about.
Because then it would go to the principal, to Dr. Matrix, to us.
So it kind of gets, okay.
And maybe in a few years, once those are established, worked out the kinks, maybe we could have a student.
Oh, kind of like leveled up
sitting
kind of
here,
thing. Okay.
But if we're looking at student, where is the student voice going to have the biggest impact?
Yeah.
I think it's going to be reporting to the principal rather than us.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something that we do in our district where our principal meets once a month or once, like right around the board meeting, meets with like a group of students that kind of volunteered, and she brings that to the table to the board. And then there's also like a student council member that also speaks. So you kind of have two different student voices, but you still have like the student voice being heard. But I like, that was one thing she did right away, was do that advisory committee and like get students together. And she would do like a lunch and bring some food in for them, and they would just talk about what's happening in the building, very just like what you had done, yeah.
And it sounds like there is kind of something in the works in that area.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind hearing those findings. Like, once a month, every other month, I don't know, like, again, we'll figure out what kind of works, but I'd be interested to hear those findings.
Yeah. And to start off, I think, just hearing what's coming out of the groups would be, at least for me personally, would be sufficient.
Yeah, I agree. This presentation was just so enlightening, and we had that at every school.
Well, they nothing against you, Bob, but they might be more open to suggesting things to a principal.
I can't even get people to sit next to me in a meeting, so no offense to you.
No, but you're right. Like, I think they'll have their connection with their principal, their building. Like, when they say a name or a place, like they're going to have more knowledge of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, depending on, your schedule, you could potentially pop in so that they do get more used to who you are and don't have to be like, who are you? And then have your own superintendent advisory council.
Super advisory council.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I think this definitely could be more of a long-term goal and kind of, crawl before we walk.
But I think if, one of our things is student voice, the easiest and quickest route is going to be, I think, doing it at the schools rather than coming up with an application process and a timeline and rubrics and how to assess. And,
It's more group too. It'll be more, we'll hear from more people this way. So.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to add more work to it. Like, I know, like, they don't have to meet once a week, but like, if they want, like, I think we can they can kind of determine what's the best for their school, what's realistic for the school, but I wouldn't mind hearing those findings every now and then.
Mm-hmm. Sure. I agree.
Any other comments, questions?
That's what I was going to say, is that the advisory council would be a good place to begin until that gets kind of normalized, and then we can grow it into a student ambassador program.
Well, we have our first full admin meeting of the new year on Wednesday next week. I certainly can bring this topic up and get suggestions from my colleagues to see what they think is, I don't want to say feasible, but like a natural, how would they find a group and when would they meet?
That's what I'd be interested, like, let them kind of figure out what,
Yeah.
what's realistic for their building, their students, their population, yeah.
And then maybe by the spring, if it's up and going, we could kind of hear how it's
Of
going
course.
and, yeah.
Definitely.
I'm good for that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This
Thank
was
you.
really interesting read.
I found it really interesting to do this, to do this research. I mean, people were really passionate about it. I don't know, I found it kind of interesting that it seemed to be more prevalent in like smaller and more rural districts, and I don't know, but I don't know if that's a correlation or just a coincidence, but I found it kind of interesting.
Yeah, thanks for looking into it.
You're welcome.
All right, if no more questions, we'll move on. Item F, written report on property tax appeal board and intervention legal appointment. So the board has a written report on the selection of law firm to represent the district in any property tax appeals by law. And so included in the packet is a resolution, which will go on the August 24th agenda for consideration of approval. Are there any questions for Mr. Bobeck about this?
Speak a little bit more about this.
I'd also agree with that.
It's annually, districts are charged with, if they so choose, or if they so elect that they want to appeal property taxes, you have to do it with legal representation and legal counsel. So annually, you have to identify a representative, a legal representative, to fight the property tax appeal on your behalf.
Yeah, I guess I don't recall that we've ever had to identify a legal representative. Have we done that? Or
Yeah.
I thought we just
Usually
sort
it
of joined
probably-
with other districts that.
So we kind of changed the format, because it used to just be, I don't even think I got a written report. I think it just wound up in consent all the time. Consent. So every year, yeah, we've been doing it because there's that resolution that needs to be passed. And if you don't do it, then you are not able to actually challenge anything in the courts.
So we don't use our normal attorneys for this?
So Gleason is our normal attorney.
Yeah.
So, and the names change all the time, because it used to be something completely different, and now it's Gleason and Petrarca, who used to be, I think, part of Scariano, and so we're using the same attorneys, it's just that the firm's name has changed so many times.
I guess that's why I'm just confused.
Yeah.
Even though we have that attorney on record, we still have to designate them as the
Annually.
as the group that will defend.
You have to do it annually,
Yeah,
yeah.
no, I don't remember that. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, sure.
Any more questions? Right, we'll move on to item G, written information on revised board policies. So the policy committee met on July 13th, and we talked about several policies that needed to be updated, and one of the policies, 2:125, board member expenses, references an exhibit resolution to regulate expense reimbursements, which the district has not had before. And so it's included in the packet along with the other policies. And this is the policy where we need to fill in some blanks, right?
Yeah, there's a dollar amount that the board has to approve.
And I guess I was kind of confused. It's one of the footnotes, right, where it says alternatively, the board could set a daily limit on meal costs, right?
Yes.
So I think, I guess to me, it doesn't make sense that we would do that. I guess we would do that by separate policy or by amending this policy, right?
Is there a page number?
Oh, I'm sorry. This is page 6 of the policies document in your packet.
Thank you.
At the very bottom. So there's language where you see the 23 notation on number 3 at the top of that page. It talks about how meals charged to the school district should represent mid-fare selections for the hotel or meeting facility or general area. And then there's that footnote 23 says alternatively, the board could set a daily limit on meal costs. And I think that, especially around here, like it depends where you're at. You know, are you in Washington, D.C.? Are you in the suburbs? Are you in the city?
Yeah.
I feel like the dollar amount could be so different that just leaving it at mid-fare would be sufficient. And I don't think it's something we've had issues with in the past, right?
Correct.
Any other thoughts about it?
So do we need that exhibit?
Is that all that's in the exhibit?
It's the exhibit is page 8 in the packet.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Which exhibit?
It's 2:125, E3. And so, Anna, based on what you said, you could just strike that whereas, where it's got the specific dollar amount if you're not going to go that way.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so that part up at the top. And then,
The number 2 at the bottom also asks for a dollar amount.
okay. The maximum allowable reimbursement for travel, meal, and lodging expenses is for an amount not to exceed.
What would be the same amount as up top, but
But it, okay.
if
but
you included it.
Okay. I mean, I guess unless we absolutely had to, I wouldn't, want to set a dollar amount. So we would leave those numbered or whereas lines of the policy out.
Okay.
Does that make sense to everybody?
Or we can set the federal per diem rate.
That's what I was thinking, like our district usually does like there's a per diem rate, like for breakfast, lunch is just one amount and then dinner is a different amount. It's like $25.50, right, or something like that, or?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the federal
Yeah.
rate is, but they have an established rate.
That's what I was just, yeah.
For business travel.
And is that like IRS rate, or is that a?
IRS that sets it or not. I don't think so.
So would you like the administration to find those rates and bring them back next month?
Yeah, we could always bring it back,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the government has it set up, yeah.
Oh, General Services Administration, okay.
Yeah.
All right, any further discussion? Okay. Item H is the receipt of Freedom of Information Act requests. There were 4 requests for June, and those log sheets and letters are attached for reference. Are there any questions for Mr. Boback about any of those?
Would you like me to read them?
You don't have to. I mean, I hate to make you sit and reread them all because we all have them in print, but if you want to, if you're missing that, you can go ahead.
I think somewhere they state that they have to be read aloud.
Does it have to be read? Okay, all right.
Whether it
Let's
be
do
at every
it.
board meeting or at a semi-annual.
Okay, good.
I've got the 2 in front of me. It's
Okay.
the Kathy Smizer, NBC Chicago, and Telemundo Chicago, requested 615, filled 620. Please provide me with the following material: all settlement agreements resolving any Freedom of Information Act lawsuits, all judgments or other court orders requiring you to pay attorney fees, costs, and/or civil penalties in any FOIA lawsuits, all invoices from law firms for work on any FOIA lawsuits or public access counselor reviews. For the lawsuit or the PAC, review was ultimately decided in favor of the requester. All claims made to an insurance company for coverage involving a FOIA action. All studies, reports, or other records calculating or referencing the cost of FOIA lawsuits or PAC reviews on an annual or other time period basis from January 1st, 2013 to present. Second one is from Jody Cohen from ProPublica, requested on 7/5, filled 7/11, requesting any correspondence with the U.S. Department of Education of Civil Rights or its representatives since May 17th, 2023, related to the OCR disability discipline complaint filed on that date. Any subpoenas or requests for information since May 17th, 2023, related to the OCR complaint. Any depositions or other written statements since May 17th, 2023, taken in connection with the OCR complaint. Any reports created or completed since May 17th, 2023, in connection with the OCR complaint, or the underlying incidents or allegations. This should include, but not be limited to, the incident reports, logs of events, or safety checks during the incidents, notification letters to parents or guardians related to the incidents, and any internal investigations related to the matter. And that's that one in a nutshell.
All right. It says there were 4. Were there more?
There's 2 in the board packet, and then one of them has a couple pages of where it shows what the actual response was.
Oh, okay. All right.
So you see 7 pages in the board packet.
Got it. Thank you. And that answers the question. I always wondered why we had you walk us through them, because they're usually pretty self-explanatory, but I appreciate you doing that. And just for a second, I'm sorry, would like to just go back to item G for a second, and I'm having trouble putting my finger on the actual policy number at the moment. But there is, this is the section where the proposed change to the citizen statement time would be, right?
In terms of the number of minutes, yes.
Okay.
2:30, I think.
I'm sorry?
I believe it's 2:30 is the number of the.
2:30, or is it 2:30? 2:230.
Yes, sorry.
Yes. So I just wanted to point out that the committee discussed this policy because it was amended kind of at the tail end of COVID to reduce the amount of time that citizens had to speak during the citizen statement time of the meetings. So the committee presented 3 minutes, and then the final vote would be next month's meeting. So I did want to just kind of see if that's kind of the consensus of the board, because I personally would like to see it be 5 minutes, specifically because the policy gives the board president the ability to limit that time if needed. So if we had, during COVID, we had meetings when there were sometimes 20, 30 people, either emailing in at the time because of all the restrictions in place, or later on speaking by Zoom or coming in to speak, which made for some pretty lengthy meetings. But the policy does already allow limiting the discussion of any one topic to a certain amount of time, and then limiting each individual person's time at the board president's discretion. So does anybody have any thoughts, or is everybody happy with 3 minutes?
I think it's best to have a standard uniform time so that there's no feeling on part of the citizen speaking that they're being treated unfairly. So you gave this person 5 minutes, but you only gave me 3 minutes, or you gave this person 15 minutes. So I think it's unfair, and people will see it as biased treatment, especially if the board president is making that decision without the support of the rest of the board. So I think 3 minutes standard across the board gives everybody a level playing field.
That's what's in the proposed policy.
Yeah, I like that 3-minute idea. And then, yeah, I like that idea of like, and also, you don't have to make that call, like you said, like you would have to make that call on your own, you wouldn't know what the board's feeling, but I like a set limit, like 3 minutes, I like that idea. So we're going from 2 to 3 is essentially what we'll be doing, right? I like it.
Okay. All right. The next item on the agenda under Board Improvement and Operations is announcements and committee reports. Are there any announcements or committee reports?
The foundation met via Zoom. I left my notes at home, so I'm not going to be much help. I know that there were some action items that we came up with, but I can't remember what they are right now.
The gist of that meeting was really how to get the foundation out into the community. And so we talked about having an elevator pitch for us to give at our community events, and there were 3 of them last week, and I really appreciate it, Amy. We got a couple of folks from the Park City visit to join the foundation. Brooke has worked with some of the, I don't want to say previous, but like the people whose names are currently associated with the foundation, even though we haven't met in several years. And so we do have, Brooke now has rights to the foundation Facebook page. And so when she is back next week, we'll start cleaning that up and working on it. We're also going to, we talked about adding a presence to Twitter and LinkedIn to get the word out on the foundation. We talked about maybe having, for all the schools, back to school activities, a flyer about how to participate in the foundation. So it was a lot of talk about PR and how to best increase the number of people who are, number one, aware of the foundation, number 2, who want to participate in some way, shape, or form.
Would Brooke be in charge of the PR on Twitter?
Yes. Yeah.
It wouldn't be an officer.
Well, certainly she would work with an officer, but yeah. So.
And we are still in need of 2, a secretary and a treasurer.
Treasurer, yes.
And for the public at home, treasurer does not have to do treasuring duties. It could be just a liaison to a hired firm or individual. So it's really just, I'm the treasurer, so anything treasury comes to me, but I could, if the foundation decides to hire a firm, and the foundation treasurer would just pass on documentation.
I think we made some good connections during our community meetings, so hopefully those positions will get filled.
Good.
So I haven't been around where the foundation's been intact. Like, what have they done in the past? Like, what are some things that, like, an example of some of the work they've done?
Grants to classrooms.
Grants to classrooms?
Yeah.
So they would, like, a teacher would apply, like, a grant cycle kind of thing? Okay. Nice.
Yeah, like there was an application, and I did it. And it was for classrooms.
Yeah.
And that's part of the PR that I think needs to happen is how is the PTA and their grants different than the foundation grants?
Got it.
Well, the other thing that my understanding is that a function, a need that the foundation filled, and particularly in a district this large, I think is really important, is that there was whether it's PTA events that are really designed, which are awesome, and they're designed for children in each of the schools, and the foundation had events that were designed for adults. And when you look at our 7 different zip codes and how many opportunities or events are there for the adults to come together, like there was a golf outing and there was some evening like auction type things, as I understand it. And I think besides raising money for our schools, it would just be a nice way to make connections with people that maybe you wouldn't socialize with in your neighborhood from around the district.
Yeah, and the whole idea of the foundation, when we started it, was more infrastructural kind of fundraising versus what the PTA does. To your point about the PTA more touches the kids directly, fairs and things like that, and this was more infrastructure, playground equipment.
Like Bigger items.
bigger
Mhm.
things.
Okay.
Yeah.
And-
And then to your point about the focus being more on the adults in the community participating.
And because it hasn't been like in play for a few years, are they still sitting on like an account?
Mhm.
So they do have a starting budget kind of thing to work with. Oh, that's good.
Mhm.
Okay. So we, in theory, could get this up and running this year or have like a grant cycle at the end of the year or something.
Mhm.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the goal.
All right. Do you know if Warren's Foundation is still going?
They're starting theirs up again too.
So everyone kind of stopped, okay.
Their next meeting is the 7th, and they're working on being in homecoming parade and Gurney Days parade, and theirs is more of an alumni foundation. So they're starting.
Thank you. Any more committee reports or announcements? Okay, we'll move on to item B, board improvement status requests and future board items. Number 1 is discussion of the board agreements and email preferences. And can I just ask, before we get into the agreements, are the email preferences something separate?
Yes,
Okay, but there's no documentation, there's no document for that?
not in the packet,
Not in the packet, okay.
but I pulled mine from the Starting Right workshop.
Oh, okay.
So I
And-
can-
Yeah, sorry. I just can't remember how we.
It's front and back.
Oh, okay, all right. So this has to do with, when Dr. Machek will receive questions from us, how things are added to the agenda. Okay, well, let's do that second then. So you have in your packet a copy of the board agreements kind of redlined with the changes that we discussed at the Starting Right workshop, but we did not get all the way through these. So I'm assuming we got through the end of agenda development, but I do have a question about that second bullet item under agenda development. It says board members with a request or suggestion for the agenda will contact the board president and vice president. And I'm wondering if we're doing that kind of by email or even by phone, that we might be an Open Meetings Act issue, because we, in the questions that were received for this meeting, we did have some direction that we shouldn't be, emailing the board president and vice president because of OMA, right? So how should we do that? I think we added "and vice president." Maybe the reason it had just said we'll contact the board president is because of that OMA issue.
Well, I think so the vehicle for finalizing the agenda, or to the extent we can, obviously there were some changes that Laura shared with you today or yesterday, but I think that's when the vice president, president, and superintendent sit down. I mean, if somebody had contacted Corey with an item and somebody had contacted you, each of you could bring those and say, oh, well, I received this from this person to add to the agenda, and, I think that's how that would play out in terms of it showing up on the agenda.
So then maybe it should say the board president or vice president instead of
Sure.
"and," because then we run into those
Okay.
issues. Make
Okay.
sense?
There's no violation of the Open Meetings Act if you email board members. The violation comes when you have the discussion on the subject.
Right.
If a board member emails the president and vice president and says, I want X on the agenda,
As long as there's no reply or conversation over
well,
it.
even if you ask for clarification.
Okay.
But if you start going back and forth.
About the actual topic.
And start making decisions
Got it.
on it, then it's a violation of the Open Meetings Act.
Got it.
It's not a violation otherwise.
Just like sending a statement, okay.
Right, but that was my thought, was like, let's not even because it's so
Right.
easy to just reply to an email and get, in the weeds, so I think
So
if it says,
why tempt us?
yeah, I think if it says president or vice president, it still accomplishes that. So it looks like we made it through those 3 topics at the top. The next is effective board meetings. Does anybody have any proposed changes to this, either of these bullet items? Okay, we can move on then to the next category, which is respect. Any changes to those bullet items? Any more changes at all? We have 3 more topics, so I don't want to slow walk us through it. Anybody have any other recommended changes to the board agreements? All right. And then as far as email, or it seems more like broader, like communication preferences, since we don't have the copy of this in our packet. I mean, I hate to put it off again and bring it back, but we really haven't all been looking at the same thing since a couple months ago when we were in that Starting Right workshop. Would that be okay, Dr. Machek?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so if we could have this in the packet for next month. I mean, I haven't heard any input from anybody that any of these things aren't working, but then it's kind of the way that we've been doing things in the interim, but we can just.
May I have that then to add to the package? Sure. Thank you.
Thanks.
The only copy. It's the only copy.
Brianna's ahead of us all as usual.
I just don't throw anything away.
So the board agreements, do we need to vote on these at the next meeting? I think we did last time. Yeah, okay. So we can add those to the agenda for next time. All right. Any more comments, questions? Huh? Wait, this one down here. We have one at the bottom, yeah. All right, so we'll move on. Number 2, something more fun, discussion of Gurney Days. Corey, you wanted to
Coolest
talk
theme
about
ever.
float building?
Coolest theme ever, by the way. How are things going? If you want to, I mean, I hate to put you on the spot.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, tomorrow is the float bill day.
Yep.
Tomorrow is the float bill day. It's basically the next 3 Fridays, so if anybody wants to drop by, it's at the Red Barn behind the primary school. Families have adopted an album from the 70s to celebrate how we rock and Gurney Days rocks. And yeah, so they're all painting. They picked up their supplies. I did some stencils. They're really giant. And yeah, just looking forward to come back. Now let's hope for no rain this year.
I still like what you guys did last year with the rain. I know it was, you didn't get to see in front of everyone, but going to school was like the perfect way to do it.
Maybe we should do that in addition to doing the parade. I'm not trying to add things to your plate.
I'm sure if we talk with John and ONF, we can arrange
a travel
tour. Just take it through during bus drop-off in the morning.
Yeah. So we'll be there if you want to drop by, even if it's, just for a little bit or just see what's going on. But it's kind of in stages. So the float needs to be pulled back into the garage. We need to kind of dust things off. We're going to have to measure stuff, maybe cut a couple things. Anytime between 9 and 3 tomorrow.
Awesome.
And the parade itself is the 13th, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we don't have details yet on spot number or time to get there. So when we have that, we'll let everyone know.
Okay.
What about t-shirts?
I guess, yeah, we get will we have a meeting before then? We won't have a meeting before that, will we?
No.
So in the past, we all wear our green shirts.
Life in the W shirts.
Life in W.
We don't have a theme shirt?
Oh, we should rock and roll shirt. Oh, now that would be 70s band shirts would be fun.
One of our old band T-shirts or something. I don't know. Like, concert shirts. No, we usually just wear woodland wear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we want to stand out still is, yeah. But that would be fun.
We do have,
Yeah, in the past we've done t-shirts that for the thing. Or gotten a t-shirt.
Yeah, when I did it 2 years ago, we wore the green ones. I remember seeing, yeah. Yeah, rock and roll.
We have all those old bands at Target and Old Navy.
Oh, yeah.
So, but
concert team. And we have music themed giveaways, to hand out along the route, so that'll be a lot of fun.
Awesome. That's great. Okay, awesome. Let's move on. Number 3, discussion of board governance recognition application. And I just wanted to be clear, because I asked for this to be added to the agenda. This is the recognition that we received a couple of years ago, right? Okay.
But there's, and Laura certainly is well-versed in this, but there's every 2 years you can apply, right?
So we received recognition in 2020. So, and I don't know, and I didn't check with IASB, so I don't know if we were to go ahead and do this 24, if we would be reapplying for it since we skipped 2022, or if we have to start the whole process over.
Oh, I see. So we didn't do it for last year.
We didn't no, because it's a 2-year process. So we could do it in 2020. We were approved and we got the recognition. We would have had to do it in 2022 again. Then 2024 you reapply. So you reapply every 2 years. But because we skipped 2022, I don't know if we can go ahead and reapply or if we have to start the entire process over.
Oh,
But also
interesting.
the board has to accomplish certain things in order to
Yes.
apply. You just don't
Correct.
apply. There's
Correct.
Training that you would
Certain amount of
have
training,
done.
right,
There's
yeah.
board collaboration.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Where we would be working better as a team.
Yes.
Before we would apply for such recognition. We're not there as a board, especially a new board. I don't think we've built a solid foundation as a board.
Well, and Dr. Maychek included the actual application in your packets, so that'll give you a really good idea of what the board as a whole needs to do and needs to accomplish and have, be able to reference for you to apply.
Okay. There's a timely factor here? Is there a time factor? Is it?
There is, I don't know what,
The application's due August
August 1st, so.
Oh, well, we're
Yeah.
way behind the ball
So
on this
I
one.
don't think we're gonna be there
Yeah, no,
this
I
year,
don't
but
either.
this gives us what, we have a whole year now.
Yeah.
We
Right.
could apply in a year.
because I believe it is due every August 1st, if you decide to go ahead and
Okay.
do that.
Well, that's good to know. When we received this last time, I was just brand new on the board and didn't really know a whole lot about, what was involved in it, so I just was hoping to understand that a little better. All right, thank you. Any other questions? Comments? So the next item on the agenda is the item we added, a superintendent evaluation. Give me just a second to get that pulled up, because we have a lot of documents about this. Or,
Time frame.
so we got, it was in our packet because it was originally listed in closed session, I think, right? Yes, so we had some items, some different evaluation forms that we could choose from, and then we also wanted to talk about a time frame. So when we look at what the IASB recommends for a time frame, we're kind of already behind on that because it was a process that starts in May and June and kind of follows through for the entire year. But it obviously is something that we still want to provide is, an evaluation. Anybody have thoughts, questions, concerns?
I mean, I think it makes most sense to determine what our reporting tool is going to be.
Yeah.
And decide on that. And then, we need to be expeditious in processing along.
Yeah.
So that we're not behind every year.
Yeah.
Like I would hope that we would be able to, catch up so that next May, we can follow the timeline like IASB
Yeah.
recommends.
I think we could. I think we could catch up. I don't like the word you said there. I think, realistically, if we try to do this, if we try to move forward with this, we would do, at the next meeting, we would approve the platform or that, and then would we also approve the goals that time, or do you kind of see that being the month after, or week, that's the problem, right?
Well, first we have to approve the tool.
Right.
Mhm.
And then
And then
goals
we-
go to act
yeah.
September, okay.
So I can't remember if it's because I know you emailed it to me, Corey, but I really
Yeah.
like the form that you sent.
Yeah, it's the one we used previously that they had developed. It was great. It was basically, list out the goals. Every one of us would kind of individually kind of put our own notes and stuff into it, and then the notes would be brought together by the president and vice president and
The committee chair.
committee chair. Okay.
Yeah, you form a committee to do the superintendent's evaluation ad hoc committee.
Okay. Yeah, I wouldn't mind, I mean, we could use, I wouldn't mind using the one we've already used in the past, just because I'm familiar with it, but if we wanted to look at a new one, we could also do that, so in theory, we would bring two to the table, kind of, would that be the way to do it next month? Like, we bring two options to the table for everyone to kind of agree on, we bring the one that's you've used before, and we bring the one that we've used before and kind of figure out the best option, would that work well for everyone?
Or maybe this year, just decide on one, and then we can always, as a committee, come up with,
Modify it later on, okay.
yeah, next year.
So maybe continue to use the one we've used in the past this year. And then when we catch up, we can look at it as a whole. I like
Then
that.
you know if you like it, don't like it, what would you change about it, because you've had a chance to use it.
Yeah,
Yeah, I like that.
cool.
Okay. So do we then, what would be our next step? Would we be forming a committee at this point?
We would approve the evaluation tool next month. Get the goals out the month after.
Yeah, the consensus, you don't have to.
Yeah, I think we could
Oh,
just,
really?
yeah, I
Oh,
think we could just keep doing what we've been doing.
is everyone okay with that?
I found that the Woodland one was recognizable, it just made sense to me, so I lean towards that one.
So in theory, next month we can approve goals, right? Do we have to approve that as a group?
Well, I thought Dr. Maycheck supplied his goals based
Mhm.
on what he did for the strategic plan and things like that. So the goals are pretty much what he did over the past year. For next year, the committee could work together with Dr. Maycheck to come
For
up
new
with
goals.
some goals for this coming year.
Okay.
But the goals are the goals at this point, which we had given to him when he first started. You know, we gave him some goals, one being the strategic plan, and I don't remember the other goals, but Dr. Maycheck does. I'm sure they're written somewhere, but those are already done.
Okay.
Yeah, he's completely.
So
I
that's
was-
what we're evaluating.
I was
Those- yeah.
messed up. I thought we were skipping. Okay, so we're gonna actually evaluate last year then.
Mhm.
Okay,
Mhm.
that works. And would it be all members then, or how would we do that with like new members on the board? Like how does that come to play?
Yeah, they have the same thing as
Same
everybody
thing,
else.
okay.
Yeah, I think we did when we were new.
You still came in and did it?
Part of the turnover.
Yeah. So yeah, then we'll get that out.
So on this time frame, ISB has in January or February, it says by March, the board evaluates superintendent performance in light of progress toward goals. So that's kind of where we're behind.
Yeah.
And then in May, June, the board evaluates progress toward district goals and changing internal and external realities. So that's kind of the end of the process. And then the self-evaluation was also listed for January, February. So that's work that you would still be doing, right? So that's kind of where we would be starting in this process, because we did not have a mid-year informal evaluation.
And we don't have to follow IASB's
Right.
timeline.
Yeah, so what was-
We can develop a timeline.
Well,
and
yeah,
the board can
exactly.
approve it.
I mean, for this year, yes, but I was wondering, like, is this something that we could make policy in
We
the
could work on that,
future?
and the committee could work on that one. The committee could kind of decide that one, yeah.
Because I kind of feel like that's why I feel kind of lost on this as far as why we haven't started it, is because it wasn't policy. Because to me, like, that's kind of the language that I, like, that's where everything starts. So if we could, maybe the policy committee, after this first evaluation that we're going to do, maybe the policy committee could take feedback from that and
Build out
consider.
the timeline.
Yeah, and I also am wondering if that's something that other districts, like, is this timeline part of policy in other districts? Could we find that out, or is that an IESB question?
Oh, I could ask Laura Martinez.
Okay, yeah, because I just feel like, to me, like, that would give me much clearer direction, you know, having that as policy. Okay, so we agree that the goals are, probably exist in print somewhere, that they're at least in meeting minutes, or Dr. Maycheck knows
The
what they
ones
are.
that were in the packet,
Yeah.
I have in front of me.
Yeah, they were, I think they were approved in November.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
The board
right.
did approve them.
That's right, okay. And so you have done the self-evaluation?
Well, I mean, after a fashion, because I certainly, I mean, my reflection was how I feel I progressed, and then provided evidence of having reached those goals. So
Okay.
if that's a reflection, then yes, I did.
Yes. I think so. Right? Okay. So the next part really is then to
Board feedback.
establish a committee. Is that how it was done in the past, Carla?
Yeah, there was a committee.
Okay.
But if you have the tool, you have the self-evaluation.
We have
you
the goals.
You know, I think now you would just, make
Send
sure you
everyone.
come out and send it out.
Okay.
You guys decide who's going to collate the remarks.
Was that usually done by the president, vice president, or like one or the other kind of
The
thing?
chair. I mean, you could be whoever's on the committee,
Okay.
who's chairing that ad hoc committee can collate.
So
So you guys
no.
can decide that. I mean, in the interest of time, maybe one of you guys do it,
Okay.
but get ready to establish a committee for next year.
Yeah. Okay.
So everyone be okay with that, like if I did it or something like that? Okay.
Okay. So then you would, the form would go to everybody. Everybody would be expected to weigh in, provide, you know, some insight, and then Corey would synthesize.
Yeah. 2 weeks, is that enough time if I send it out, and then there's 2-week notice to work on it?
I think so.
2 weeks, I know?
There.
And then I'll send a reminder email the day before, a few days before.
You're gonna use like a fillable form or something to make it easier, or?
I assume there will be a Google form involved at some point if Corey's doing it.
Obviously, I would love to do that, yes, but I might use the Word doc, just the previous format for now, but if we decide to go change it a little more, I might,
Okay.
offer that suggestion.
And then I can, you know, from policy committee perspective, kind of pick your brain on how it all worked, and then the policy committee can get to work on that.
Cool.
Okay, all right, well, we have some next steps, so,
We did it.
thank you. All right, and then, if there's no more questions on that item, we can move to status of correspondence, and board direction on responses. You have those in your packet. Are there any questions or suggestions for those responses?
I think there's just one, right?
Yeah.
I think just a nice thank you for emailing and recognizing the new agenda.
And they actually did not request a comment or a response, but doesn't mean we can't. All right. The next item on the agenda is citizen statements. Do we have anybody else signed up? No? Okay. Is there any need to return to closed session? Nope. All right. Can I get a motion to adjourn the July 27th, 2023 governing meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Corey,
Yes.
Gary, Carla,
Aye.
Renee, Brianna,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Anna.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.